Things have had a pretty solid Castlevania feel for the last couple of blocks. So Chronicles thinks we are overdue for another hard swerve into weirdness. Not right away though. The first stage of this block looks and plays about how you'd expect. The weirdest thing is the music with the slap bass and the steel drums, but we've handled worse than that. They do have us descending a vertical section, which is new. If you're willing to take it slow and use the stairs, it's actually much easier than ascending would be. But I hate Castlevania stairs like any right-thinking person, so I'm diving down, taking the risks. On this platform, when you touch a certain block, it summons a money bag, but you have to use the stairs to get to it, and Simon must hate money or something, because he really takes a sweet time getting there. It's a very tight window to get that money. I've already failed to collect 2 of the secrets though, so I'm really going to try not to miss any more. That whole descent would have been a lot easier if I'd used the downward whip more, but you fall like a stone in this game. No matter the distance, as soon as gravity takes hold, you hit the ground almost immediately, so the timing is nearly impossible on downward whips. And the Medusa heads are here. Just in time to be a nuisance for the collapsing bridge. Admittedly, they're the only thing that makes this part any sort of a challenge, because the bridge falls in super slow motion. You have tons of time to move to the next chunk of bridge as yours falls. If you do get hit by one of the heads, your window of opportunity is cut dramatically, but it's still possible. Not to undersell the difficulty of it all, I have game over there, but it is mostly for show. Then we have ourselves a rare mid-level music change. In fact, the only one in the game. The new track is some intense symphonic fare. Pretty typical stuff for the series, but the area it scores is anything but. We found ourselves in a pastel-colored, toy-themed nightmare tower. Way creepier than the monster-filled hallways we've traversed to get here. And here come the deadly balloons that are released from specific boxes in the floor when you get a certain distance above them. This kind of sensory overload can make you just shut down, let the dolls come kill ya, hopefully put an end to this nightmare. They do have a unique mock crying animation when they finish you off, but of course the nightmare doesn't end. We just have to fight through it. And it's not going to be an easy fight by any means. As much as that death was intentional, I've taken plenty here that were not. Everything in this stage is designed to be disorienting, and that especially includes the behavior patterns of our new enemies. So I'll just let you observe them a bit more before I attempt to explain that. These wind-up guys are our only non-flying enemies, and one of them dropped an herb that we didn't have a chance to get, so they dropped another one. They must really want us to have one. It would come in handy, but this bat coming my way insists on forcing a cross into my inventory instead. You might guess that that weird wall all the way over to the right would have meat inside, and you'd be right. But of course there's a trick to it. The floor underneath the meat also breaks, so if you stand there and whip it, it will fall out to the platform below, and you'll probably miss it unless you do that leaping strike like I did. Dropping down to get it makes a bunch of the dolls respawn. When they first scroll on screen, they have a long animation where they stand up and curtsy, and if possible, that's when you want to get them. Once they float over to you, they will try to stay just above or below the sweet spot for your whip. And if they're a specific distance away, they just automatically dodge all your attacks anyway. So they spend most of their time doing an I'm not touching you thing, trying to limit your movement as the other enemies swoop around. Also, on the Japanese version, they had the following voice clips for when they did their curtsy and their automatic dodge, respectively. So just imagine we heard those sounds about 100 times each during our ascent for the full experience. On hard mode, there's nearly twice as many enemies as what we saw here. It is chaos far beyond my ability to handle. I could not complete it. But I could complete this, barely. That brings us to the Hall of Mirrors, which makes even less sense than the Tower of Dolls. Dracula has little use for toys, but no use at all for mirrors. He's a fucking vampire. Whatever. This stage is very easy, so I'm going to take this time to explain the game's weirdest Easter egg. On the 6th and hardest loop of original mode, they add 3 more of those falling mirrors to an upcoming section, and reflected in those mirrors you can see a unique piece of artwork, but only in the brief moment as they're falling to the ground, and mostly obscured by the borders of the mirrors. So here's a much cleaner look at it than you would get if you actually took the time to beat the game 6 increasingly difficult times. It is a smoking, chibi Simon, with text that says something to the effect of, "Here's fake Simon." No further explanation available. For our final challenge, we must face Mirror Rick, or Shadow Link. It's a doppelganger fight. He too has a unique pose when he kills you, and I've taken the opportunity to switch the music to original mode because I have 2 separate tracks to show off this time. So let's get our sample of the level's 2nd theme out of the way right now. Taking the upper path this time for a specific reason. If you manage to hit these axe armors in the feet while they have their shields lifted to cover their face, it's a one-hit kill, but opportunities are infrequent. And we picked up the only sub-weapon available here, the knife. We've seen it come in handy against bosses before. This time it'll be for a very different reason, but they definitely put it here in hopes that we would choose to take the slower, more inconvenient upper path just to get it. There's also very easy to find meat, and no really notable threats in the stage itself. Very generous of them, probably because this boss is so hard, right? We saw it use a bunch of frame-perfect down-whipping Taz strats on us last time, but it is also programmed to use whatever sub-weapon we bring in with us, and what makes the knife so useful here is the fact that it is useless. The doppelganger doesn't know that though, and will prioritize throwing it at us over the attacks that he has that are impossible to dodge. He will inevitably fall into a pattern where he'll just keep attacking at eye level. All you have to do is duck and whip, and all your hits will do is knock him back. Then you can either just take a step forward and repeat the process, or take the occasional hit and damage race him until you win. It's an exploit they must have known about because they provide you with the exact tool you need in order to trivialize their boss. But the weirdness doesn't end there. The track from the beginning of this video was called Moonfight, and it was composed specifically for this game. It had never appeared in a Castlevania before this one. By design, it plays for the shortest amount of time of any song in the game, and yet it is the most dynamic song on the soundtrack. The original version doesn't loop until about 2 minutes and 12 seconds, and for the arrange mode, they added a bass solo on top of that. This game has a hidden bass solo. So I'm going to link both versions and recommend you at least check out the 2-minute mark of the arrange mode version.